Welcome to Doc Secret, the show where we uncover the playbooks, strategies, and stories behind the most successful dental and medical practice owners and the companies that serve them. This show is all about building the best practice. Whether you're a dental or medical student dreaming of private practice, a seasoned doctor looking to grow or sell, or an investor exploring the healthcare space, this podcast is for you. I'm your host, Kevin Carl, and in today's episode, we're diving into the world of finance and accounting in the dental industry. Let's get started. Welcome to Doc Secret. Joining me today is Ken Kaufman. Ken has been president and chief financial officer of multiple VC and private equity-backed DSOs and is co-author of the book Financial Secrets to Grow Dental Organizations, The 9 Required Clarity Tools. Ken Kaufman, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much, Kevin. I'm thrilled to be with you today.
Ken, let's start with your personal journey. What led you into dental finance and ultimately into leadership positions at multiple DSOs?
So this all started back 2 decades ago, and I was doing fractional CFO work. It was shortly out of my MBA program, and I came across a group practice. Believe it or not, the term DSO didn't exist back then, and they had a couple of Winnebagos that they had retrofitted into operatories, and they had some other on-site hygiene programs and things that they would go around to employers. And that was my first foray into dental, and I've really been here ever since. I'm fascinated with it, the KPIs, the way the model works, and the need to really understand human behavior in order to build a great organization.
Well, you've obviously been enormously successful at that. You've quadrupled a fast-growing DSO. Let's talk about that. What were the first levers you pulled to drive that kind of scale?
Sure. So there's latent opportunity always around us. We can never actually harvest all of it. And in the world of dentistry, that latent opportunity is most likely within your current associates, your practice manager, with others that are in the practice. And so understanding what they're motivated by and creating a culture that allows them to drive the outcomes that they're the most excited about, that just creates a great culture. And so where some might look at me and say, "Oh, this is a finance guy. He doesn't care about people. He just wants to do spreadsheets and jump around and do all these different things." The reality is that without dentists, there's no DSO. And without a DSO, there are no assistants. There's no support team. There's just nothing else that even exists. And so, building a great organization and finding that latent opportunity, it's generally sitting right underneath the noses of your associates and all the other people that are there in the practice on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, it's a complex environment with this exchange of value between dentists and patients. We explore a lot of the business side of that here, and that's been one of the topics. Gosh, it's been in almost every one of our podcast series, this trade-off between a dentist and patient, in terms of value exchange and what dentists are interested in. It seems like dentists are primarily interested in providing the best value for a patient. Yet dental schools seem to train the most on providing care, which is, a natural thing, but not so much on running the business, if you will. So let's dive deeper into that in our discussion. And let's start with what's the biggest misconception that dentists have about running a multi-location business? We're talking about going from an individual practice to a scaled practice. What's a misconception they might have about that?
So, the general misconception is how do and this is the question that the doctors are trying to wrestle with, and that is, how do I do something different, and I'm gonna be at one of the practices, but that means I'm not at the other practice, and there's that ongoing concern of, how do I make sure that people aren't stealing from me? How do I make sure that everybody's doing the work that they've been assigned to do, and they're not taking it easy, or they're not, stealing from the company, so to speak, in a matter of, in various manners, and so I think that the biggest piece of the puzzle here is that when you go from one location to 2 locations, that's the hardest growth you're ever gonna have, because you're literally doubling, and you've gotta figure out now, how do I create systems? How do I create my processes? What type of training do I need to put into place in order to create a practice that represents me and represents how I view the world? As I'm pointing at myself as if I'm a clinician, and I'm not, but the clinician wants to make sure that the same level of care is happening in each of these 2 locations, and that they're representing, the owner doctor well, and what their motivations are, and what they're trying to accomplish with the patients, and so it really is about becoming very intentional and thinking through and building process so that practice number 2 can thrive and do very well, even if that owner doctor isn't there every day.
Yeah, and having read your book, it sounds like you've got some very distinct recommendations on how to set up those practices. So, let's dive into that a little bit. I hope you're ready for this one because I've got a lot of questions. By the way, really enjoyed the book. Highly recommend it. You've somehow figured out how to make finance and accounting fun for your readers. I like what you and your daughter Ashley have done in the storytelling manner of the book with Amelia, Jules, Ed, and what have you. So your book puts the concept of financial clarity front and center. And for listeners who are not finance people, what does that term really mean?
Sure. And when we talk about clarity, I have it on 2, spectrums. The first spectrum is being able to look backward and see what happened, and learn from that information, and figure out, how can I improve and do something different? The other component is being able to look forward, because the more we're able to look forward and have some level of confidence in where we're going in the future, man, that changes everything in terms of being an operator of any type of a business, whether it's a dental practice or 2 dental practices or an auto mechanic shop or anything else. The ability to start to see forward is so, so critical. And that's ultimately, so there's 2 types of clarity. It's understanding what's happened in the past, because that is going to inform your future, but then really being able to hone in on, okay, now how do we grow? How do we take on the next thing and the next thing that needs to happen in the organization?
Yeah, thanks for that. And I would say a lot of what you talk about in your book, I think is applicable across other industries as well. Obviously, there's a clear focus on the dental industry, but a lot of these economic principles really transcend industry. So, why is a lack of financial clarity one of the biggest killers of profitability in dental organizations?
Sure. So there are several layers to this. Let me simplify. I think the best way for me to say this is that when you do not have clarity, anxiety generally fills up that gap for you. And you're worried about, so am I going the right direction? Or, did everything happen that should have last month? And there's a back and forth with that, and a lack of confidence about how to move your organization forward. That just becomes, in some instances, crippling, maybe physically, maybe mentally or emotionally crippling, about, now what do I do next? Building a business is not for the faint of heart. It is hard. Dentistry is a hard business to be in, because it's so patient centric, and there's so many things that can go wrong at any given moment. And I think that when you get clarity, it removes the anxiety out of the equation, and it allows you to function the way you want to with your patients and your staff, and it allows you to think clearly about, okay, now how do we improve, and how do we get to the next level?
Yeah, that's great. What signals or indicators should a practice owner look for that maybe they're financially disorganized or not getting the clarity that they should be having?
Sure. So in the spirit of having clarity looking sort of backward into the past and into the future, you want to start with the past. And it's generally just a set of financial statements. And when I say set of financial statements, everybody says, oh, yeah, I can read a P&L. It's more than that. It's your profit and loss statement, it's your statement of cash flow, and it's your balance sheet. You want to be able to look at those things on a monthly basis, and you want to receive those things from whoever's doing that for you. You want to receive those no later than the 15th of the month after, or of the month that we're talking about. And so when you do that, you start to get that clarity about, okay, so what's happening in the past and where are opportunities to improve. And then as you get that part really dialed in and you get comfortable with it, then it gives you the ability to maybe start projecting out a little bit, maybe do a budget, maybe just put a little bit of a forecast together to see where, what's going to be happening to cash flow and those sorts of things. And what happens is after a little while, you get trained and you get excited when those financial statements are going to come because you understand what it is you're looking at. And even if there's something on there that's not impressive or perhaps didn't go nearly as well as you wanted, it's information. It's not a judgment. This is one thing when people first start looking at financial statements, they feel like it's a judgment of them as a person and them as a clinician and as a business owner. It is not that. It is just about giving you information so that you can figure out how to continue to build and be successful in what your mission is.
That's great. And I know you've been really clear in your book. You've laid out 9 clarity tools. Could you walk us through a few of the most essential ones from your perspective?
Sure, I'll jump all the way to the end of the book and say one of the most powerful tools that we have is the ability to prioritize all these great ideas that you have in your head about how you can improve your business and how you can improve this practice, or how you can potentially bring more practices into your fold. All of that comes with cost, all of that comes with risk and many other things. And one of the tools that is the most helpful is to be able to prioritize all the great ideas you have into what's going to bring the best ROI first, and getting everybody to focus on that one. And let's finish that one. And then we'll go to the next one that has the next highest ROI capability. I find that early on, as dentists are trying to build and grow their organization, they are unrealistic about how much they can actually do. And sometimes it's a time issue and sometimes it's a money issue where, hey, we're gonna we're gonna break the bank here if we go on with this project, and we can't do that. We have to be obviously fiscally responsible, and everything that goes along with that.
Well, that's great. I appreciate the focus and the jump to the punchline. What clarity tool do you think most owners are underestimating or frankly overlooking entirely?
Honestly, it's cash flow. If if I got no financial statements at the end of a month and somebody showed me my statement of cash flow, that is all I would need to know if I'm winning or losing. In the game of business, there are only two outcomes that can occur. One's bad and one's good. The bad one is your business is consuming cash. The good one is your business is actually generating cash. That's the right kind of business that you want to have. The businesses that sell for millions and hundreds of millions and billions of dollars, it all comes back to what is the cash flow generation that this business can drive over whatever period of time wants to be measured. We could say over 5 years or maybe over 6 months or whatever it is. But for me, the number one metric is I want to see cash from operations. I want to subtract my CapEx, my equipment and things like that that I had to buy. And I'm just going to do a simple um, subtraction problem, and it's going to tell me on a free cash flow basis, am I generating or am I consuming cash?
So, if somebody is just starting, is that the recommendation for the first clarity tool that they should implement? Is there something else that you'd recommend they should start with immediately? Like, let's say somebody's listening to this podcast. What should they do tomorrow to make an impact in the financial health of their business?
The very first thing to do is to make sure you've got somebody on your team, probably outsourced, which is fine, that's doing your bookkeeping and is giving you financial statements by the 15th of every month. And if they're not doing it, pick up the phone and call them and tell them they're fired until they can figure out how to do it. And feel free to throw me under the bus. Say Ken Kaufman said I needed to do this. I've spoken in various places. At one point in time, I was actually in um, I was in a seminar and I said, "How raise your hand if you're getting your financials by the 15th of the month." And no hands went up. And I said, "All right, all of you pull your phones out right now, call whoever your accountant is, and I want you to tell them right now you're going to fire them unless you start getting that information. You have to demand it. You're the leader. They may be slacking off. You've got to challenge them, and you've got to you've got to lead them just like everybody else in your organization, and you got to set the expectations." And honestly, it seems so simple to you and I here, Kevin, but you'd be surprised at how this is just not a primary focus of the service providers in the dental industry at large.
Yeah, yeah, I'm hearing that. That's one of the particular things that led me to your book. And the interesting piece of that that you just talked about is about how cash flow, frankly, about how important cash flow is, right? And that might imply to the uninitiated that what you're a proponent of, what a lot of dentists do, is focus on cash based accounting. And I know you're a big proponent of accrual based accounting. For example, in the book, you use a very simple metaphor, these four horses running around the track, all getting to the end, but running at different speeds and kind of, you know, different measurements. Could you break that down for us and tell us why accrual accounting is so important for dental practices, for DSOs, and for scaling your business?
So, at a very fundamental level, if your financial statements are being presented in a cash basis format, they're wrong. They're not accurate. And the reason why is because all that's showing up there is the money that's coming in and out of your bank account. It has nothing to do with what was your gross production, what was your adjusted production, doesn't have anything to do with that. What we care about when we're looking at our financial performance is what actually happened, what production was accomplished, all of those sorts of things during that period of time. I'll use a month as sort of the period of time we're going to talk about in this example. But the key thing is you have to be able to see what's really happening, and all that cash basis stuff is noise. When you switch to accrual, it now focuses on, okay, what's actually happening, and it gives me an accurate view of what's happening in the business, not just what's flowing in and out of the bank account. And a great example is that when the dental exchange problem came up and everybody was trying to submit their claims and nothing was getting adjudicated. People that were on cash basis were freaking out because their financial statements showed zero because they literally were collecting nothing because no claims were coming through. Well, guess what? Those who were on accrual accounting, they were fine. They knew exactly what production had occurred. They knew all of these different things. And yes, ultimately, you've got to collect from the payer, whoever that is. But I don't know, that to me, that's one of the best examples, that I have of the power of accrual accounting and the fact that it is the most accurate way to look at your financial statements, and that creates all kinds of benefits. Holy cow. Like, for example, if somebody's gonna come and buy your business, if you're on cash basis, guess what? You're gonna get discounted, period. Some of what you should be getting paid for your practice is gonna end up in the buyer's pocket as a result of that.
Ken, could we take a pause there and just dive into that? What do you think? And I mean, you've been around this world, you've seen it all. What do you think the impact is on the value basis of a practice? What do you think that value impact would be if they're over on cash accounting and not on an accrual based accounting system?
Yeah, I've talked to a lot of sources on this one, and I've asked a lot of people their opinion on this. And so, to be clear, this is a lot of people's opinions, but generally speaking, the rule of thumb here is that if you're on accrual accounting, you're going to get a half to a full turn on EBITDA at exit.
Wow. Wow.
And why is that? Because people who do accrual accounting they're showing that they're serious about their business, and they're going to fly right through a QV process because usually the QV is all gummed up with trying to sort out and to move the financials from a cash to accrual basis. It's yeah, it just brings massive confidence. And by the way, confidence from the investor, gaining their confidence that you're running a great business, that is the number one driver of valuation, period.
Well, you've made a really strong case for someone to move to accrual-based accounting if they're still in cash-based accounting. What's your advice to a practice owner whose accountant is still running everything on a cash basis today?
Yeah, I need to be careful here because I can maybe be a little too opinionated, Kevin. But generally speaking, my opinion is that most finance people, accountants, bookkeepers are way underserving the groups and DSOs in dentistry. um, there is an opportunity to implement accrual accounting very quickly, very simply, very easy, and to keep it running on a monthly basis. And it does two things. One, yeah, it's going to help with valuation and confidence, but it's going to help you run your business better. Because guess what? Cash basis accounting, when you're trying to think about projecting the future and all of that, you're going off of something that's completely wrong. Whereas when you're doing it off of accrual accounting, you're building all of these things out based on something that's completely and totally accurate. And so again, I could probably talk on this for a while. I feel like the industry needs to step up, Kevin, and I'm probably not being shy enough about it, because I'm actually trying to have a very loud voice. I would love to see a democratization of accrual because right now it feels very unachievable to some, primarily because others in the industry are saying, "No, it's not worth it. It's expensive, blah, blah, blah." All that stuff is wrong.
Well, let's help the typical dental practice owner. Let's assume for a moment that a practice owner is listening. They're taking it to heart. They want to add a location. Maybe they want to partner with private equity, or they just want to make themselves better, available for acquisition. What makes a dental organization truly financially ready for that?
So this is the way I think about that. At the very moment that you are so good at what you're doing that you can put together a model of your future that goes 5 years out, and you're able to have validated assumptions associated with that about, okay, what's the production per doctor and what's the production per hygienist, and you have all your metrics, all these things, just dialed in. The moment when your organization becomes worth the most is the very moment that you have built it so that somebody else, if they wanted, could take over, or you could continue to run it if you wanted, and you could execute on this beautiful 5-year plan, and you are so confident about it that the investor or the private equity becomes very confident about it. And it's not about playing games here. This is about real world, real life. This is where we know we can take this business because we've been doing this. We're good operators. We know what we're doing. We have the right KPIs in place. We measure the right things. We hire in this fashion. We have tracked associates in this fashion. All of those things all come together into this large microcosm that says, here it is, guys. We know what's going to happen for the next 5 years. And yeah, will there be hiccups and challenges for sure? But it's once you get there that your confidence goes so high and the investor's confidence goes so high, and that's where you have the most valuable business every time.
Well, let's dive into a couple of the secrets here. So, in Doc Secret, there's a reason why secret's in the name. If you could put your DSO hat on, and I know you've been on the PE side, right? But over on the DSO side of things, what are some of the financial red flags that PE firms see when they're evaluating a practice or a group practice for acquisition?
Sure. So, one of the big ones is a massive list of adjustments to EBITDA, where you've gone in and you said, "Well, we did this and we did this and this didn't work, that didn't work, and so we're gonna pull that out of our EBITDA so that our EBITDA goes up." And some people will refer to that as as a pump and dump, where you sort of like pump up so the organization looks great, but then when a new buyer shows up, guess what? It starts to deflate, and it turns out that a lot of that, wasn't real and wasn't justifiable. Um, Unfortunately, there's a fair amount of that that goes on, out there in the world, and what I'm really, really pleased about, although as an industry in dentistry, we have gotten here painfully, but I think dentistry is finally learning its lesson and understanding that value is not just in the eye of the beholder. It is in the eye of the beholder, but the beholder also is going to be really smart. And if you're trying to pull fast ones, they're generally going to be able to catch that and push back. And, you could even end up losing a deal as a result.
Yeah, and I know that it has been really challenging. There are a lot of things to blame, interest rates and what have you, but I know that it's been challenging in this DSO space of late, and we'll talk more about that. But, for now in this context, what's the difference between a DSO that thrives post-transaction and one that stalls, given what you just talked about, about solid investigation, scrubbing the numbers, working with a practice owner to really kick the tires? What's the difference between one that thrives and one that dives?
Yeah. So I think the first place we've got to start there is with who is going to be leading the organization. And if this is going to be the doctor that's run this business and now they're bringing private equity in, but they're still going to be in that CEO role, that primary operator role, um, that that one probably has a lot of opportunity to really thrive and continue to thrive because you have the operator who's in there, they know how the business runs and everything that goes with it. Um, it doesn't mean that an operator can't exit at the time that they bring in private equity. But what that requires is that operators got to really hone in the systems and the processes and everything that it takes to be able to succeed in the business because dentistry is complicated. It's hard. I mean, if all I said was doctor recruiting, that by itself is several people's full-time jobs in many DSO organizations to try to figure out how to crack that nut, how to find the right types of associates that will really thrive inside the practice. And so it really comes down to either you have the operator that knows how to do all these things and knows how to pull all those levers to drive the business, or you've got to have really clear systems and handoffs so that whoever is going to be operating can continue to use, I'll call it quote unquote, the trade secrets or all of the great processes and systems that this business has used to grow and be so successful.
Yeah, well, nothing happens in a day, right? And that's a lot. I can imagine a lot of our listeners are thinking about that. There's a lot that happens in the shift from operator to owner. What advice do you have for practitioners? Maybe they're in their 30s and 40s and they're thinking ahead about this move from operator to owner. What advice would you have for them?
Congratulations is how I'd start with. Being an entrepreneur is really hard, but can be really rewarding. And like, be ready. There's going to be plenty of challenges. I think that the very first thing they should do is do everything they can to shore up their financial house and make sure you're saving as much money as you can and talk to banks and lenders about how they might be able to help you with what your dream is and what your vision is to go and accomplish. But I think that's the place to start is get that stuff shored up, and then I think you would wanna look around and start focusing your CE less on specific clinical modalities and focus it on conferences and things where they're teaching a lot of business principles and finance principles and, how to launch, a brand new dental practice type of a CE. And I think that those types of things will, over time, just gaining that knowledge and gaining that perspective because and the thing you have to remember in this, you have to remember this, you are your greatest asset, period. This business is a people business, your ability to communicate, your ability to thrive in that type of environment, Sometimes it means you've got to be good at coercing to some degree, and coaching and teaching and disciplining and all of these different things. Those are all skill sets, and learning how to read your financial statements. And there, I'd say just start getting yourself as educated as possible and start padding the bank account, and thinking about what that dream is going to be, and where you want to go with it.
That's great. That's great. Well, I know you've been on the investor side of this equation as well, Ken. If you were speaking to a fellow investor or maybe somebody in the DSO space, what what should they be asking beyond EBITDA and growth rate when they're evaluating a practice or DSO team for acquisition?
So it depends on obviously what the sponsor wants to do, and sort of what their motivation is. But the thing that's the most critical for a sponsor is, and I'd say this about operators as well, an operator who's going to sell to a private equity sponsor, or if we're just talking private equity, the number one thing here is understanding provider the provider health business model. Understanding that, you know what, sometimes the way the days fall in December, the days open fall in December, mean we're going to have a little bit of decline compared to prior year. And learning to not freak out about that, and learning that, guess what? Doctors need to be able to spend Christmas with their family. And by the way, nobody's going to come to the practice on Christmas either. And as much as we want to not have that happen, and we want all of our numbers to be so perfect and consistent, it's just not going to be. These are human beings, I'd be really, really wary of bringing a private equity sponsor on that has not funded and not been a leader inside of a provider-based type of a business. Otherwise, you're gonna spend a lot of time educating them, and, they may end up never even really fully understanding, your business model. So either find one that's ready to go or get ready to train.
That's great advice. I want to turn back to your book here for a minute, Ken. Um, I really, again, really enjoyed reading this. What's your favorite concept or insight from your book? And what's the catch? What are the things that people tend to overlook?
So, in the book, I introduced a character named Ed. Actually, I should say my daughter introduced Ed. She wrote all of the storylines and created the personalities and identities and those things of the different characters in the book. But you do not have to be alone here. There are people out there that can help you, in all of these areas. There are consultants, and some of them are worth their weight in gold, and some aren't. And so, obviously, you want to make sure you find the right ones, and vet them, and those kind of things. But if finance isn't your strongest suit, find a fractional CFO, and engage with them and learn from them. Don't just say, "Here, go do your job," but ask them what they're doing and why they're doing it, and use these types of assets and consultants to to educate yourself, and to learn. I actually really appreciate some of the clients that I've worked with over the years, and especially right now. I love it when they're asking me questions about, well, so why are we doing it this way and not that way, and what does this mean, and why does this number matter more than that number? Being inquisitive is a very, very important component of your success as a business leader. And secondarily, then hiring and trusting your people to go and execute under your leadership.
Yeah, that's great advice. I think, by the way, for any industry or walk of life, maybe turning, yeah.
And I started by talking about Ed. I mentioned Ed because Ed was this person who showed up that just problem after problem after problem, had the solution after solution after solution, and every time Julia would just be floored, like, "Whoa, how did he know how to do that? And how did they get the bank to agree to that? And how did this happen? And how did that happen?" The book was designed to try to expose as much as possible that, hey, there are people out there who could just step in and help.
Yeah, yeah, that no person's an island, right? And knowing what you don't know is often, as they say, the key to success because then you ask the right people for help. Speaking of help, I know the DSO space has been challenging of late. I'd love to get your perspective. You have quite a lens up and down the value stack of the industry. I'd love to understand from your perspective, what are you seeing in the marketplace now and from where we've come? I know it's difficult, but what do you predict over the next, let's say, 18 to 24 months?
I don't know that I'll make tons of friends with this, but the reality here is that dentistry got dealt a very, very difficult hand as a result of COVID and lots of other things that have now happened. And so the cost to operate just went up. And to the degree you're dependent on insurers for your revenue, you have seen little to no increase in revenue. And this has just made dentistry really, really hard to maintain margins and to even try to build margins. I think that it's gonna take a minute for there to be more hygienists who can come into the marketplace, and perhaps we could see a little bit more of a leveling of provider cost there. Dental assistants continue to be a challenge, in some instances, um, just finding anyone to fill that seat. And so there are some real challenges there, and this is very fundamental, right? This is the base level of your dental practice and how you're able to treat your patients. Um, because of that, private equity, is getting way smarter. They've got time and they're sitting back and they're looking and seeing what's happening to the industry, and they're realizing where some mistakes were made in the past. And so now I think we have more educated private equity players, which I think is good over the long haul for dentistry at large, because there's opportunity to grow and expand and create more opportunities for patients and for the industry in general. Um, in in the next 12 to 24 months, I think we're gonna continue to struggle with getting lots of, consolidating deals put together. There are still DSOs that are in bankruptcy, in receivership, and everybody knows about it, and so you have people who wanna enter the marketplace, but they're nervous about some of the foot faults and some of the problems and challenges that our industry currently, is responsible for at some level. And so my take is that irregardless of all the noise and all the stuff that's going on throughout the industry, the number one thing that you can do as an operator is build a phenomenal business. And for a while, there was this, everybody was saying, well, I'm going to focus on same store growth. I'm going to focus on same store growth. But I still think that was mostly lip service. You have the opportunity to pull back and really look at your practice and figure out where that latent opportunity is that I started the podcast talking about. Where are those latent opportunities? And it'll hone your skills as an operator, and it will drive the value of your business up. And ultimately, a private equity sponsor or an affiliation with another group, you will be looking way more attractive than anyone else, because you have figured out what makes your business work, and you've figured out how to optimize it and drive amazing patient outcomes and built a great reputation and lots of five-star reviews. Like that's what we've got to focus on right now, and I don't think we're gonna see lots of big deals over the next year, year and a half.
Well, that's quite a prediction. I can understand why you prefaced it that it might not make you a lot of new friends. But I think honesty and a realization of where we are in the industry is really important. And I really appreciate your perspective. Ken, I know you've probably heard this, but we wrap up our show with a lightning round. And these are quick answers. First thing that comes to mind. Are you ready for that?
I'm ready, let's go.
All right, let's do it. What is one clarity tool that every dental office should implement this month?
Fractional CFO.
What is one finance metric too many owners ignore?
Free cash flow.
What is one book that has made a significant impact on you personally and or professionally?
Everything that, Lencioni has written. Everything.
Nice. I have a few on the shelf over here. What is cash-based accounting in one word?
Crap.
No mince words there. What is your favorite financial software for practices? I know I'm putting you on the spot.
Oh, jeez. I really don't have one. And then they all have their problems. I have really hard to pick one. I think for the larger groups that are growing, it's got to be Intact or NetSuite.
Tell us one quote that you live by as a CFO.
Yeah, oh wow, that's a good question. That one just caught me off guard. Um, as as the CFO, I'd say that the one quote that I live by is, "What is the ROI?"
Excellent. Excellent. Well done. Ken Kaufman, it has been an honor and a privilege to have you with us on today's show here on Doc Secret. Thank you so much. Really appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin. It's been a pleasure.
If you liked today's episode, please like and subscribe, and most importantly, share this podcast with others you think may benefit from the Doc Secrets shared here today. Thanks for joining us on today's episode, and we'll see you next time.